Good evening, thanks for joining us. Tonight, is David Cunliffe the right man to help Labour win the election? Or could the party be heading for a complete and utter thrashing at this year's election? Lynched starts right now. Thanks for joining us. Labour leader David Cunliffe joins me shortly, but first, the memo to Christchurch. So police have finally decided to use an engineering firm to look at why the CTV building collapsed. It's about time, and it can't come soon enough, really. Despite media reports suggesting that the CTV families are happy with this decision, many remain frustrated with the lack of accountability and the massive delays in getting the investigation to even this point. A Christchurch man who lost his wife when the CTV building collapsed says it's about time police investigate this tragedy, and it's been extremely frustrating waiting all this time. Dr. Man Alkaiski says families simply can't move on with the story of CTV half told. He says what families do know, listen to this, is that the building was badly designed, badly inspected, badly constructed and badly damaged. CTV family spokesperson Peter Brown told me on News Talk ZB last week, a lot of people are simply frustrated at the professional engineers sector, and here's why. If you're a doctor, a nurse or an electrician and somebody dies under your watch, you're suspended until the outcome of the investigation is determined. So why then is it that those involved in the construction of the CTV building are still allowed to practice despite their work coming under the spotlight of a possible police investigation? It is simply not good enough, and someone needs to be held to account. And that's this week's memo to Christchurch. I'll have more on this at the end of the program. But now to Labour. It's fair to say it's been a bumpy ride for the opposition. They've had some good luck in the Christchurch East by-election when Poto Williams won, but to be fair, that was a given, wasn't it? The polls haven't been kind in recent weeks. So what is going on? Here's Marcus Gibbs.
David Cunliffe is Labour's 14th leader, but is he Prime Minister material? After losing a battle for the Labour Party leadership in 2011, David Cunliffe was anointed as leader last September due to a change in the voting system which finally allowed the party membership to have their say. It was an interesting time for Cunliffe. He'd only been leading the party for just over a month before he started flying to Christchurch to help promote Labour's candidate for the Christchurch East by-election. Labour's Poto Williams won the by-election and David Cunliffe secured the first tick beside his name, but with it came a bold claim.
I think there's definitely a wider movement on in Christchurch, and I believe that the country will take heart from this to see that change is possible and change is coming.
The Earthquake Recovery Minister was quick to write Labour's win off.
Well, I think it's absurd, to be honest. I mean, what's he saying? Whip-de-doo. We won a seat that we've held since 1922.
Cunliffe chose Christchurch as the location for the Labour Party's conference. It was also the place where he made a number of policy announcements. All this happened during the by-election. The Insurance Council accused Labour of offering by-election bribes. Prime Minister John Key made sure his candidate, Matthew Ducey, was sitting front row at every event. But Labour was still the only party promising to revamp New Brighton, the suburb at the heart of the Christchurch East electorate. The New Brighton Community Revitalisation Project would kickstart the party's Kiwi Build program. Beginning with existing government and council land assets, the party would then build 10,000 homes in Canterbury over 4 years. This block of red zone social housing in nearby Avondale was offered by Cunliffe as potential temporary homes for rebuild workers as part of the Kiwi Build policy.
And how soon do you think these could be saved?
As soon as we become the government.
However, Calburn courts could be demolished before Labour can save the units. Sarah hopes to bulldoze all red zone buildings by the end of the year. If they're still standing and Labour's elected to power, Cunliffe will need to move quick. Things were getting off to a great start for Cunliffe. He'd managed to hold on to the Christchurch East foothold, and Labour's votes seemed to be increasing, but then it all went wrong. During his State of the Nation address at the end of January, Cunliffe announced a policy to give parents of newborn babies $60 a week until the baby turns 1.
This is an investment in our children. It's about the best investment that anybody can make, because if you can ensure somebody gets a good education, is more likely to get a good job, not end up on the welfare queue or worse still in prison, those dividends get paid through their whole lifetime.
Cunliffe faced a public backlash when he failed to clarify that parents won't be eligible for the $60 a week baby bonus while they're on paid parental leave. He was accused of misleading the public by the Prime Minister.
There was some confusion in one line. I've taken responsibility for that, but let me repeat. There was, there is, and there will be never any intention to mislead New Zealanders.
In the latest political polls, Cunliffe has suffered from a lack of exposure over the last month, dropping 2 points as the country's preferred Prime Minister to just 10%. Prime Minister John Key maintained his 43% support from the last TVNZ poll in October. Cunliffe says overall the poll shows Labour's continuing to make steady progress. But the question has to be asked, can David Cunliffe realistically still hope to win this year's election when the polls are so low?
Marcus Gibbs reporting, and coming up after the break is tonight's guest, Labour leader David Cunliffe. Stay with us. Welcome back. My guest is Labour leader David Cunliffe. Hello.
G'day,
Thanks
Chris.
for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.
Let me just start with the collapse of the CTV building. Is it good enough that police have only now decided to employ an engineer to look at why it collapsed? Shouldn't they have done this 3 years ago?
Absolutely. And look, this is my first time on air since the collapse. I was in the building actually not long before it collapsed. I know that you lost nearly all your staff in that horrific event, and we've just passed the 3rd year anniversary. So I just want to say to you and to your viewers how sorry I am and how sorry my team is about that tragedy once again. I couldn't be there on the day. We were told local MPs only, and so I just want to take the opportunity to convey my personal sympathies and good wishes to the viewers.
Thank you. Let's move to, we've learned a lot in the last few days with the convention centre being scaled down, no roof over the stadium. Does that indicate to you the government blueprint is flawed? The wheels are coming off this Disneyland dream that was first touted a few years ago?
Oh, I think the government certainly sold a hollow dream to the people of Christchurch, putting a stadium up while people were still so badly treated in respect of their own insurance problems. I can't believe how calm, how stoic the people of Christchurch have been, and people are now at the end of their tether. I met a lovely old lady, Dot, this morning, who had been waiting 3 years to find out whether the home that she and her late husband built was going to be repaired or demolished. They haven't even answered her phone calls. You know, she's completely in the dark.
When you say they, who do you mean?
In her case, it's EQC and State Insurance, State being a subsidiary of that big overseas insurer, IAG.
Well, let's pick up on that with the insurance issue. I was really surprised to hear only 15% of all insurance issues and claims have actually been settled.
Absolutely.
And even Minister Jerry
shocked.
Brownlee told the Christchurch Press he was shocked by that figure and didn't realise it was so small.
Now,
what is your response to that?
I'd say let's take a rain check on that. So the Minister, the person on whom Parliament has conferred extraordinary wartime powers and who has the obligation to be policing this stuff, he says he's shocked when the figures come out. And only 10% of payouts have been made after 3 years. That is extraordinary. That is gobsmacking. And it's even more gobsmacking that he doesn't know about it. What has he been doing? How is he policing the insurance industry if he doesn't know how many houses have been rebuilt and how many insurance payouts have come through?
Aren't you being unkind though, because isn't this more to do with the fact that the insurance companies have failed to be upfront with Sarah about how many homes they've actually settled, or claims they've made rather?
Well, when you're the regulatory authority, you owe better to the people of Christchurch than to wait for sort of voluntary disclosure at some time when they get around to it. Now, I mean, of course, I think the insurance companies should be doing a hell of a lot more. That's why Labour's putting Kiwi Assure into the market to give them a hurry along, and if that doesn't work, there'll be a regulatory stick to beat them with. But the Minister owes an obligation to be the hound dog that's chasing them along, and he shouldn't be surprised when the data makes it into the public domain. What's he been doing for the last 3 years?
But the flip side, instead of having just Kiwi Assurance, the Minister would probably argue that, well, you know, eventually I say, billions of dollars worth of private investment or money rather from the insurance companies will come back into the city. So why do we need Kiwi Assurance then?
Oh, look, simply because having a nimble, high-service, low-cost competitor that is dedicated to the public interest because it's owned by the public, that's going to keep the others honest. It's going to keep competitive pressure in the market. I thought.
But haven't we got enough competitors?
No. No, we've got an increasingly concentrated market where much of the market, I mean, you think about IAG's got 3 major brands, NZI, State, etc. They used to be separate competitors. Now they're owned by one umbrella company. It's bought AMI as well. So the market's consolidating. We need more competition. Heck, even the government supposedly believes in competition, although you wouldn't know it because, of course, the stitch-up deal between the main engineering consultancies is all still in place. So let's get markets working where we can, and let's have the government stand behind that process with a regulatory big stick when it has to. But at the moment, the poor old people at Christchurch are out there on their own. The Minister doesn't even know how many payout cheques have been received or how many houses have been rebuilt. That's if you believe him.
The other issue, though, that people often say to me on Talkback Radio is that why doesn't the government just set a deadline for the insurance companies and say, right, guys, I want you to settle all claims by 2015 January, that's it, otherwise we're going to start penalising you. The Commerce Commission's going to come in, you're stuffed.
That's what the Aussie government did with the Queensland floods.
So why can't we do it here
So they
then?
gave them 12 months. Look, we've got a very, very open mind to that. I actually think that's a really good idea. It's been 3 years now. Only 10% have been done. I'm sick of it. I'm fed up, and I think the people of Christchurch are fed up. And an incoming Labour-led government's going to put the boot down and get this thing broken through. We're going to make change happen, and if it's not going to happen because of a competitive market, then the government is going to have to set some boundaries. I completely agree with you.
Your old mate Leanne Dalzell doesn't like Sarah, in my view. She's made that quite clear. She thinks Sarah should go. And there's too much duplication. That's the feeling I'm getting.
That's undoubtedly true.
So do we need Sarah then?
Well, Parliament's passed a law which gives Sarah till 2016, right? Now, at the moment, I understand Mr Brownlee is talking about extending it and expanding it beyond that date, which I find very, very surprising. What we need is a transition plan. We're starting now and working with the new council, which, look, I know Leanne well. She is a bipartisan, hands across the spectrum kind of mayor. She has put her party colours at the door, and she's there for all of Christchurch. She's the mayor for all of Christchurch.
What's a transition plan, though?
A transition plan is for the council and Sarah and the minister to sit down and work out exactly what functions are going to transition from Sarah to the council between now and the end of its period in 2016.
And that's
acknowledging
a good point.
the rebuild that is going on within council and acknowledging the need for it not to happen all in one lump at 2016.
See, I agree with you there, but what I don't understand is why Leanne Dalzell keeps saying we need another layer of governance. To me, that's another layer of bureaucracy.
Well,
We've got Sarah.
Chris,
why can't you pick up the phone and say to Brownlee, "G'day, mate, we've got a couple of issues today. Forget another level of governance. Just in making all these committee meetings, that just sounds like BS."
I don't think it's BS. I think it's good practice. Take, for example, the New Zealand superannuation.
Good practice to do what? Create another group to say to talk to among each other. Do you see what I mean?
No, but you don't want politicians meddling in commercial decisions. And that's part of the problem, because you get a big guy coming in.
We've got the entire city council, though.
Pull this, well, yeah, within a delegated framework. But you have a minister who's got wartime powers, comes crashing in and says, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. There's no way to get a system built. It throws people off by having conflicting priorities. If you had a board, you'd get more normal governance, which is a separation between the management layer and the board, and better process. Now, that's just normal, the way that business should be done. In this case, I think the issue's bigger than that. The real issue is about the transition from Sarah to council as council rebuilds. It's not going to happen overnight, but you should plan for it, not do it all in one day.
So in your view, is Sarah still required, yes or no?
Until 2016, it should be phased down. What the minister shouldn't be doing is talking about extending it, and I completely agree with the mayor. A transition plan is needed.
I want to talk about the CBD because, oddly enough, the CBD, the rebuild is led by the government, but there ain't much happening inside the CBD.
No, there is not.
There's the Justice Precinct. You've got Anthony Goff's, beautiful bars and restaurants going up, but they can't take credit for that. The government, that is.
That's right.
We've got a donut effect in the city at the moment where you've got, areas down Lincoln Road,
yep.
Addington, all those kind of streets.
Yep.
So if you were in power, if you were Prime Minister, what would you have done to ensure the CBD grows? Would you have allowed it to grow more organically?
Well, I mean, it is quite a tough question. Obviously, there had to be a lot of buildings knocked down. What breaks my heart every time I drive through there is that it's still a dead zone. Bar one or two buildings which were lucky enough to survive, it's a flat, empty wasteland. And what I'm hearing from the business community is that it is very hard to get the economic proposition to pay for developers putting up new buildings. Because the land...
horse is bolted, they've left, haven't they?
Well, A, the horse is bolted and they've got new premises on the outskirts like Addington and other places. B, the land is highly suspect because it proves so rocky in the quakes. And 3, they're not confident in the economics of the rebuild. So nobody wants to go ahead of the pack. And I think it does require the government to kind of marshal those commercial forces and say, well, exactly what is going to pay? Are we comfortable with the design, the height thresholds, with the foundational requirements? Is the economic model going to work? And if people can see their way clear to that, then maybe there are some incentives that can be put back to help people to move back into the CBD according to some kind of known, planned schedule. At the moment, look, when I talk to Christchurch people, what I can't believe is how little people know about the game plan. Like this lady I saw this morning, she just has no information. She wouldn't mind so much if it was a year away from having her house fixed, as long as she knew she's got all her possessions in boxes. They've been in boxes for 3 years because they told her she'd probably have to move out. 3 years later, she's none the wiser. And it's happening all over Christchurch. And is it too much to ask for the patient, good people of Christchurch that somebody, heck, is asking the question, why aren't they being told?
Well, it would be nice if there was a business case first before we start dreaming up these Disneyland projects like convention centres and stadiums that are white elephants that don't make money, but don't get me started on it.
Absolutely right. And do you remember the government's ultra-fast broadband plan?
Yeah.
That 1.5 billion U-Butte broadband plan? That was nothing more than a marketing slogan, just like the stadium is. Right? There was no policy behind it. It took Stephen Joyce 2.5 years to think about Crown Fibre Holdings and talk to Telecom, and then the thing was a bloody mess.
We've got a minute left in this segment. I just want to touch on housing. In your view, who is responsible for housing in the city? Is it the government? Is it the council? Is it both?
Well, it should be a partnership. What Labor stands for is a new kind of partnership approach where the government can bring its balance sheet to play, as we will with Kiwi Build, where we've promised to build no less than 10,000 homes in Christchurch in the first 4 years. That's got a part to play. Christchurch Council's got a part to play. It's the consenting authority, it's the planning body, and of course, in the meantime, Sarah and Skirt have roles to play. Get everybody in the same room, stop talking past each other, and government, you should be the referee making sure that's happening.
30 seconds, but hasn't the government kind of rained on your parade a little bit? They've announced different housing developments. They've got the Hornby development, for example, 175 affordable homes, they say. That's something that you would probably want, isn't it?
Look, where there is bipartisan progress, I couldn't be happier. This is not about us. This is not a game of cat and mouse. This is about the people of Christchurch. If all politicians put the people ahead of ourselves, we will get more progress, and that's what we want.
I want to pick you up on that in a moment. Stay with us. More with David Cunliffe, plus your feedback and some final thoughts on the collapse of the CTV building. That's next. Welcome back. My guest is Labor leader David Cunliffe. David, the polls haven't been that kind to you recently. You were quoted as saying that there's a shift in Christchurch because of Poto Williams winning the Christchurch East by-election, but to be fair, that was always a given. So how can you turn the polls around?
It wasn't a given.
It was a given.
There was a national, actually, party vote majority in that seat, which Poto and the team overturned in fine style. It was a stonking great win, and we were thrilled by it. I don't want you to drag yourself back too much to last week's stale news, but I mean the headline was Labor was steady on 34 in the public poll. We were above that in our own polling, so I actually don't think there was that much of a story in it. But
all right, but to be fair, National's polling at what, 51%, and nearly enough to govern alone. You must be concerned about that. How are you going to change your fortune at the moment?
MMP, I mean National's been everywhere from like 39 to 59, so it's bouncing around a hell of a lot. It's early in the year, the polls are very volatile, and there's only one that counts, and that's at the end of the process. The next government will be a coalition government. And when you look at us and our partners, it's even Stevens with the National Party, has been for months. So this is anybody's election.
What do you mean by even Stevens?
Well, Labor plus Greens equals National plus ACT. Remember ACT, they're the party that wants to make the world safe for incest, and the Conservatives, they don't think man walked on the moon, and United Future, well, that's Peter, really well done, right? So actually the government's in trouble because it's got nowhere to go, mate. And we have solid coalition partners that are ready to help.
Aren't you in trouble because, as I said earlier before, the government seems to be encroaching on Labor territory with affordable housing plans? They've raised the minimum wage 50 cents.
Every 3 years, John Key wakes up and realises that he's not been listening to Middle New Zealand, and he comes up with a PR plan to make himself look like a kinder, gentler Conservative. Now, people aren't that dumb. He's spent the last 3 years giving tax cuts to rich people, putting GST up on everybody else, basically ignoring Christchurch, and now he wants to be the kinder, gentler Conservative. Well, people won't be fooled.
We've got 30 seconds. Final question. Will you be the next Prime Minister come November?
Bloody oath.
What if you're not?
Then I'll be working for it the time after.
OK. David Cunliffe, appreciate your time tonight. Well, your comments now, and we were inundated with feedback on last week's show with Earthquake Recovery Minister Jerry Brownlee. Thanks for your kind words of encouragement. We are quite proud to bring you this show every week on CTV, on air and online. There was one comment, though, the Minister made that got you pretty riled up. Take a look at this.
I'm not going to talk any further about Southern Response beyond this statement. I think the people who are out there with their concerns, publicly airing them, particularly the two who are the prominent leaders of that protest movement.
Name them.
No, I'm not going to name them, know who they are. They should put their private personal insurance details on the table so all those who look at those people protesting, who no doubt have concerns, I'm not dismissing that at all, know exactly what they're dealing with, because it's too easy to come along and say, you're being unfair, I'm being mistreated.
But aren't you making that personal, though? They would claim they're helping the community of Christchurch move on. Aren't you making it a bit personal, though?
I'm just saying that I think that if you're going to go out and kick someone publicly for not doing something, you at least should be able to say what it is they haven't done. And that would require their individual personal insurance details being put on the table so people can see it.
So Sarah Marsh, who helped create the Southern No Response Facebook page, wrote in and says, there are no leaders of Southern No Response, only individual claimants coming together because they are dissatisfied with their treatment at the hands of Southern Response and its project manager, Arrow. Different claimants at different times arrange events and share information with other claimants. Two of Mr Brownlee's so-called organisers have contacted Jerry Brownlee's office detailing our situations and wanting assistance with our claims. And to date, we've had no response. Mel Baker on Facebook says, great first show, Chris, thank you. And it was nice to see the Minister front up over the hard questions. It's just a shame he seems to be showing no flexibility when it comes to the anchor projects. He really needs to listen to the people of Christchurch who have made it pretty clear where the government's focus should be. And that is on housing and not white elephant or political vanity projects. Regards, Mel. And Kay Macbeth on the email says it's nice to see a slightly more human side of the Minister. He always seems to come across very angry, but I found the show informative without the need for dramatics. I think Jerry's heart is in the right place, but he needs to at least start visiting those in the East still doing it tough 3 years on. And thanks so much for your feedback. Keep it coming on facebook.com/lynchnz, where you can share your views there. Well, finally tonight, as police consider investigating the collapse of the CTV building, I want you to ponder this. Christchurch man Alan Ray was the principal consulting engineer of the building. David Harding was employed by him as an engineer at that time and carried out the structural design. Harding had not designed a multi-storey building before. The Royal Commission of Inquiry found there were a number of non-compliant aspects of building design. The primary reason for this was that Harding was working beyond his competence. Not my words, theirs. Even more concerning is that the Commission said Dr. Ray was aware of Harding's lack of relevant experience and therefore should have realised that this design was pushing him beyond the limits of his competence. It said Dr. Ray should have not left Harding to work unsupervised on the design or without a system in place for reviewing the design. That is compelling evidence for police, and it makes me wonder what more they actually need. See you next week.